Front-End Authority is an online community that promotes the ongoing education of front-end technologies.
My name is Will. I'm a designer here at Planning Center. I'm going to be talking about stories. So real quick, actually, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to say my name is Will yet, even though I already did. Real quick story. So I've worked here for like 5 years, and one time, anybody a soccer fan in here? Anybody watch soccer? World Cup? No? Okay. A little bit? Soccer? Yeah? All right. Rocket League. There you go. Okay. Well, I'm Brazilian. I'm half Brazilian. So the World Cup was a big deal because it was in Brazil, right? And we lost. Big time. Really bad. And on that day, well, I should backtrack. Before this building was here, it was an empty warehouse. And these kids came by one day, and they decided to draw something on the window that didn't look that good. It was, I won't say what it was a rude object. And I got really upset. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna draw my boss's building? All right. So I got up from my desk, and they were sprinting along here. So I, full-blown blast, just sprinting. Jeff, our boss, our main guy, comes out and he's like, "Well, don't!" He's like scared for these kids that I'm gonna grab them and throw them down the ravine because they decided to draw on our building. And because I was upset, I was like, "Why are you gonna draw that on my building?" And I didn't. I stopped. He said, "Jeff," I'm like, "Why did you?" Well, he's like, "Will, don't." I'm like, "Don't call my name. They know who I am." And I came back, I walked back, sat down, did my work. So the World Cup, that day, it was a bad day for me. I'm half Brazilian. They're losing. It's 5-0 Germany. This is pathetic. This is in Brazil. And I come back, I look at the window, and there's the object drawn again on the damn window. And can you guys still hear me? Okay. It was on the window again, drawn in the same pink marker that they decided to draw it on. And I was like, what the heck? These kids are like Jedi. They like ninja, like came back and drew again. This happened repetitively for weeks. Like I would leave the desk, come back, and it turns out it was one of our employees. They thought it was hilarious just to torture me that way. I got him back though. I drew those objects all over his friggin' BMW. And he had to drive to the gas station. This trucker's like looking at him like, I mean, you can guess. It was a male object. He's looking at the trucker. The trucker's looking at him like, "Bud," and he's like, "What are you gonna do?" So, anyways, that's my intro story for you knowing a bit about me. And today these kids walked past, and I was just like, "Ooh, don't do anything." So I have like a phobia with like these teenagers now walking past the building. Anyways, sorry. I'm Will. I'm a designer here at Planning Center. I also work with my good buddy Eric Bai right there. We just work on games for, he works on games with his daughter, and he's done, 20 games now? And I've recently joined him this year in making games. It's really fun. We use Unity. So if you want to talk to him about Unity, go ahead. I don't know a lot about it, other than I told him about it, and that was it. So let's talk about stories and design real quick. So a lot of us know that like stories have been around for a long, long time. It's kind of like common knowledge that, we use visual pictograms and stuff like that to indicate what we want people to do, or like directions, or give them a little bit of historical information. So it's kind of common knowledge, right? I mean, we have these images and these designs throughout history. And in the 20th century, there are two like main forms of storytelling that are really popular, other than literature, anything that's literature-based, right? There's cinema, which is gone downhill a little bit in terms of storytelling. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but it's like become more about the aesthetics. So like a lot of visual explosions, and some guy did like a trailer of all the new X-Men, Transformers, Avengers, Superman, and it looked like the same movie. He just married the clips together, which I thought it was brilliant. And I have Ghostbusters up there just because, I don't know, come on. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, but I'm like, I saw that trailer, I was like, come on, okay. Oh yeah, and that was a thing. Remember, that was a thing. I'm a Terminator fan too, and I was just like, please stop killing my movie. Terminator 1 and 2, golden, don't do anything with it. But then they cast this fool as Kyle Reese, and I'm like, just keep it OG, fool. Kyle Reese, Michael Biehn, #1. Hollywood, leave it alone. All right, Terminator fanboy ran over. And then there's games. Games is like the big storyteller, right? I mean, we might not think it because we play games, and they're just like you think of it as a series of tasks, but I think, personally, Ryan's nodding back there. I know he likes Legend of Zelda. He's got a tattoo of the Triforce on his friggin' chest. I think that Legend of Zelda is the best example of tasks that are related to a story as a whole. You know, like you're doing these tasks throughout the game, but ultimately they all lead up to like a huge story that you're trying to solve, and you want to know what's going on at the end, you know? So there's this argument, though, that games, like stories don't really matter with games. Like, I hear that sometimes, and it's typically this argument that, you know, users just want to get into a game and they want to skip past the story and everything like that. And that's cool. I mean, but I think that's kind of a little bit of a trollish argument. I don't think it's really true. I think it's a bit of a loaded statement, and here's why. I've been doing a lot of research recently, and it seems like the games that are more successful and the games that people really enjoy and invest in are the ones that have the story, you know, and they're not just, I call them toilet games because, you know, you're like playing and like, you know, just quick, turn it on and then turn it off, you're done, you know, flush, done. And that's what iOS games are, you know what I mean? iOS games, like, people are like, well, you don't really need stories for iOS games. Well, I don't know. I think that there's room for story in iOS games, but they're just really they're just really minimal. Like, they're just like quick stories, like, okay, here's the setup, here's what you gotta do, go do it. But there is a setup. It's not that there's no setup. So the two best examples of that are Cut the Rope and Angry Birds, right? So, and if you don't remember, like when I first launched Angry Birds, I remember this image. I was like, oh, the birds have a nest, and then it pans over, and there's the pigs, and they don't have their eggs anymore, and the pigs are stealing their eggs. Those bastards, like, I want to get my eggs back. And so I, you know, run after the eggs. And that makes me want to play Angry Birds. I mean, it's more than just popping pigs. You could call it just popping pigs, but there is like a setup that people want to get those eggs back. That's the ultimate end goal, right? And Angry Birds has had that many downloads. That's pretty insane since I think 2009 was the number. So, and there's 200 million active users. And then Cut the Rope has 600 million downloads as of May 2015. So, and Cut the Rope has the same thing. It's just like, you know, it's not as well of a developed story, I think, but there is a story there. And that brings us to Yarn. So those of you who don't know what Yarn is, I'm going to explain. I thought of this last minute because I was sitting here, I was like, there's a lot of new faces. I don't think they will know what Yarn is, so let me explain what Yarn is. Yarn is this game that Eric and myself recently created, and it's about a yarn ball killing zombie cats, okay? All right, that's what Yarn is. That's a little sample right there, okay? I have to give a little bit of a shout out because this was actually thought of back in 2010 between myself and these two guys on my sides here in the air at Disneyland. As Cody Lawson on the left and Brenton Rollison on the right. And they're really smart guys, went to school with them, and our project was build a game. It was like, build a game that you want people to play. And they said, hey man, we should have a game where like cat food is poisoned and the cats turn to zombies and like your yarn balls gotta tangle them up and drop them in the dumpster. And that was the first idea of the game. And I thought, okay, we made it and it was really lame. It was like with the I don't know how you say that, with the rotoscope, what is that? What is it? Gyroscope. It was with that mechanic and you had to like go like this to move the yarn ball. It was really lame. So Yarn would not exist without my friend Eric, because I took Yarn, I took that idea and I was super passionate about it. These guys, bless you, these guys here at work all know me for talking about Yarn for the past like 5 years. And when I met Eric, it was like, oh, yes. Like, I was the illustrator, he was the developer, and we were like, yes, let's be a team. Like, let's go. Wonder Twins activate. My wife says that we kind of have similarities, like looking, but nobody else does. Nobody else says that. And then Yarn launched last month, and we were really, really happy. But, and I'm going to bag on us a little bit. Okay, I'm sorry. So the problem was we thought we had spent about 3.5 months, maybe 4 months on this one game mechanic, right? And it was like more cut the rope based. And we got to a point where we were like, this sucks. We don't like it at all. This is really lame. And we changed the game mechanic and made it landscape and made it more, if anybody's played King of Thieves or Super Meat Boy, is that what it is, Super Meat Boy? So that's where we were like, yeah, this feels a lot funner. This is cool. So we spent a ton of time working on this one way, and we were just like, man, we just want to get it out the door. Like, I want Yarn existing. That's what I care about. That's what Eric cares about. Let's just get some eyes on it. And we did. And now that I'm learning about games more, I'm finding that, man, we really need to set up the story for Yarn. So people play the game and they're like, I don't really get it. Like, that's cool for the most part. I mean, you can't take it too seriously, right? Like, it's a yarn ball bouncing on zombie cats. So, but, you know, there still needs to be, there's zero setup. And we've done a game prior to that called Vet Island, where we at least had a slide that showed an ambulance going out to an island to heal the animals. And that was at least some sort of setup, even for little kids, right? So there was like a story there. So now I'm working on a story, and we're going to put that in the game. And hopefully that, you know, yields a little bit more passion from the users. People might be like, oh, this is cool. So here's my process real quick. It's pretty basic. There's not a lot to my process. It's what you might think it is. I draw a lot. I had a really morbid idea where the yarn ball ate the cat. And I just was like, man, that's twisted. Like, I don't want that. See, I put, right there. And I, you know, but that's basically, I just draw a lot. And so I draw like a creative outline of like what the problem is and where the end goal is, right? Like, where's my character going on this journey? What's the final outcome? Even if people aren't going to complete the final outcome of the game, like, I still want to have one, because otherwise it's like, well, I'm done. What do I do next? So I still wanted to have a final outcome. And, you know, we have another world coming out, so we're still pushing, we're still designing and developing the game. It's not to say that you have to have all these things. We certainly don't. But we're learning, and we're having fun doing it. And then you work on a style, and then you work on the game mechanics. That's I think, the process. We did this kind of backwards, where I had the style. I was like, man, I want it to be really comic booky and have pow and bang like the old Batman cartoon show from the 60s with Adam West, and, you know, really cheesy things like that. And, you know, I want it to feel really comic-y and everything. And that's all I cared about. So that really dictated the way that the game came out. Looking back, I really kind of wish that I'd listened maybe a little bit more to Eric on terms of like how the game should have progressed, because I think we both went back and forth on stuff. But like, the story was just kind of put on the back burner, and I felt like, man, I should have put the story first, because story is more human, you know. And the game mechanics should serve the story. You know, you shouldn't have like these random things in the game if they don't really serve the story. Like, we referenced this one game called Chicken Drop, and it was a chicken, and you drop the chicken into the basket. But there were flies that the chicken had to eat, and I was like, all right, I mean, it's a kid's game, but it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And people don't like grab onto that as much as they might Angry Birds, because Angry Birds makes sense. Like, these pigs took our eggs. Give us our eggs back. And that leads me into the web and software. That's what I do here, my day-to-day. And we had a design summit up in Utah, which was really great. I learned a lot from the guys up there. One of the things was giving our products a personal touch and showcasing a more human side of the software versus just, you know, here's A, B, and C, here's what our software does. I call it machine speak. So like basically, I have this beautiful phone, and I can call people and text people and play games on it, and then I can do math on it, and then. It's just like, okay, it's a list of features. I mean, that's all it is at that point. But when you say, you know what, I was able to Skype my sister while my dad was in the hospital. That's like, holy crap. You were able to do that from your phone. That's a way more personal touch. And you're like, my mind is totally attracted to that idea now. Like, tell me more about this device. And so that's kind of, I guess, we had talked about this at the design summit, and it was like mind-blowing to me. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, because we get wrapped up. I mean, honestly, right? You're designing the product, you're like, yeah, I want to list all the beautiful features. This is going to make people's lives happy. But it's not really human, you know? At least to me, it's not as much human. So that's one way. Marketing is definitely one way. I kind of went backwards, but through onboarding, you know, you see, I've seen certainly more and more people setting up onboarding to their software like it's an example project or an example template where it's, you know, for example, we do a lot with churches here, so church scheduling and everything. Pastor Joe needs to schedule all these people. So maybe there's a dummy template or a tour of him doing that. So the user can follow along the story and learn the pattern of how the software is supposed to work, you know? Design pitching, that's a huge one. Any designers here besides myself? Designers? Okay, cool. All right, so design pitching, sometimes you can get into the habit of dropping in your design work and then backing off and being like, okay, that's it, you know? I feel like recently I tried this, and I think it worked out fairly well. I don't know, you know, I haven't really heard I've heard really good things, so I assume that it worked really well. But, you know, you don't want to just drop the mic and walk away, in my opinion. You want to have a little bit of a scenario, a little bit of a story, a little bit of a description to why you designed it that way. Not necessarily with everything, but take branding in particular. I won't show what I did here because I don't know how under the radar it's supposed to be, and I think this is being recorded. So, but I created a little design synopsis here, a little showcase for why I designed each element the way I did. And it just like, I feel like, I personally feel like when people read it and they understand why you designed something the way you did, they will appreciate it that much more, even if they don't like it. Because, you know, you never know. You might have done a really cool design, and then they're like, well, I don't know, you know, whatever. And they don't feel the same way about it as you because they don't understand why you designed it that way. So a little story goes a long way because it makes us more attracted to it. And, I honestly, to wrap this up, I feel like stories guide us. Stories make us understand each other. You know, when you go up to someone and you talk to them, you hear their stories. And when people use our products, they should know why they're using it through the stories of others that have used it, you know? I think that's the main thing. And certainly with games, story does have a huge foundation in why you're playing the game. You know, I saw a game recently called Ruiner. Holy cow, do I want to know about that story. It's not even really about the gameplay. It's as much as it is about the story. I want to know what's going on because they based it off Blade Runner, and I'm an uber Blade Runner geek. So, I mean, let me play that, please. Let me give it now. And last thing, if you are a little pitch, it's free, Yarn, download it, try it. We had like this 20, 30-minute talk with one of the Apple representatives because we were like shouting Yarn from the rooftops and telling all of our family members and friends to rate it. And basically that's a no-no. I guess that flags their thing. I don't know. They're like, you don't really want to do that. You want your app to stand for what it is. Okay. Thank you. It was Denise? I don't know what her name was. Sorry. And so lastly, we're working on a game. You know, games, it's cool because we're working on this game called Last Hope. And, you know, if anything, Yarn, I think, made us, I don't know, I think people were like, man, these guys are doing games, and a couple of our other friends were like, we want to do games with you, so we get to work on this now, and it's fun working. I was just sitting back here earlier and watching the guys work on this, and I was kind of blown away. I was like, this, even though we might not see a huge revenue from it, it's still fun, and there's going to be a story there. I know there is, and hopefully, keep stay tuned to see what happens with that. I'm really anxious to see. It's a space adventure game for the iPhone, so yeah, these are the guys that are working on it. I think most of them are here except for Shane. He's in Utah, so yeah. So thanks for listening to me. I hope you got something from this. If anything, you thought I was kind of goofy, that's cool. And you can email me anytime. So I'm not on Twitter. It's there. I just ignore everything. I'm sorry. But Vatican's my clothing company, okay? So